Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and it's not Spawn year, it's day 51 of my comic review video day calendar, and this time I'm going back to The Tick. I reviewed one Tick issue already this year, back on day 10, and I thought maybe enough time had passed that I could get away with doing another one. I know this isn't a lot of people's favorite thing at all. The Tick is my favorite superhero, or tied with Batman, maybe second to Batman. I can never quite decide, but I do have a pretty decent-sized Tick collection, and after all, when else am I going to have a chance to look at one-shots and specials like this? I suppose I could do another Tick month like I did over a decade ago, but I don't know how many people would care about that, so I decided to take the opportunity to look at, in Oddity, one of these holiday specials, The Tick Big Romantic Adventure, which comes out in 1998 and is written and drawn by a guy named Sean Wong, who gets his start in comics working on The Tick, doing mostly these one-shots, and I wish he'd done a lot more, because I think his writing is wonderfully authentic to what Ben Edlund did with the character, and he particularly has wonderful voices, perfect, spot on for the Tick and Arthur, really understands the comedic timing between those characters, really has a good sense of that brand of comedy and the kind of weird, awkward banter that happens between them, and it also reads a lot like an episode of the cartoon show, which would have just ended right before this. And I wish that it had gone on for another season or two and that he had worked on it, because he absolutely had the right chops for it. And it's a wonderful, in its tone, the flavor of it is a wonderful blend of comics and the animated series. It gets a little bit more adult in subject matter because it is for grown-ups, but it feels a lot like that show, particularly in the structure of the story, and the new villains that are here feel like they could be cartoon show villains. So I decided to go ahead and do this now because I forgot that I had this on Valentine's Day, and I wish I had remembered that. But I figure we're only, 6 days out from Valentine's Day from last week, and so we're still in February. It's not crazy late, so consider this my belated Valentine's Day review for Not Spawn year. Maybe I'll make this a tradition, and I'll continue reviewing Tick holiday specials for each of the holidays as we go through the year. Clearly, I'm just making this up as I go along, but that's a neat idea. Maybe that's neat. Maybe that's what I'll do. I don't know yet. But if there was and by the way, if you had a date with your significant other on Valentine's Day, I hope you had a wonderful time. There are Tick holiday specials from around this period for every major holiday. There's at least one or two Christmas specials. There's one or two Halloween specials. There's even a Tax Day special, of all things, which is really funny, and maybe I'll do that in April. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I should definitely consider doing that. And there are actually a lot more of these singles and of these one-shots and specials than anything else with the Tick, because famously, and I talked about this when I reviewed the Tick Invincible crossover, there has not been an ongoing very often with the Tick. Ben Edlund had his original, what was supposed to be a 13-issue run. He got to the penultimate issue and stopped and never wrote that fateful missing, we're never going to see it now, last issue. And then there was the Tick new series, which ran for almost that same amount of time. And then later, you get the Cullen Bunn series, which only went for 4 issues, I think, and was pretty dreadful, I thought, what I read of that. And then there are lots and lots of miniseries, and one of a lot of people's favorites is The Tick and Arthur, which was also written and, I think, drawn by Sean Wong, and I have not read more than an issue of that. I'm going to have to go back and take a look at that at some point. By the way, I don't know if Wong is still in the comics industry. The last credit I could find for him goes to just 2009, which of course is not all that recent at this point, but he doesn't have a Wikipedia page. I had to look elsewhere, and I found a write-up on him on Hero Factory, a wiki on fandom.com that I guess has a lot of articles about writers and artists. So he has some creator-owned stuff, and one particularly apparently really well-regarded one in a book called Runners, which I had never heard of before, but I really like the cut of his jib here, so I might take a look at that at some point, but apparently pretty acclaimed. And something else I didn't know about him is he created some characters that I mistakenly thought started in, because I'm a big Tick fan, but I haven't read a lot of comics in a long time, and I've never read everything. So, like, I was doing a deep dive during Tick Month, which was back in, 2011 now, and so I've read Chainsaw Vigilante, and I've read Paul the Samurai, and what else? Man-Eating Cow, but it's been forever, so I don't remember those things all that well, and I want to take the time at some point to really familiarize myself with all that stuff, and do as part of, and I've talked about this recently, as part of a project I really want to do. I really want to make a documentary about the history of the Tick at some point, do a big scripted polished video about that. But anyway, he created some characters that I thought started in Tick New series, including Bumbling Bee and Crazy Blue Rocket. I didn't know that that was him. So anyway, clearly I have some catching up to do. The Tick Big Romantic Adventure, really fun cover here. It's got the Tick in as a cookie, and his head is surrounded by cookie hearts, and then on the back it looks like the nutrition label and box for a box of chocolates, and they all sound really super unappetizing. And I've got a scan of that here with this in digital, so we might take a look at that at the very end. My main criticism of this initially, and I think it wins me over by the end, is just that this seems like the most typical possible sort of love story to do, and my eyes kind of glaze over a little bit whenever we do love potion type things. But the two big things this story is about is what you would expect any Valentine's Day story to be. Like, if we had as many Valentine's Day specials as we did Christmas specials, you know how often people have to, and there's a Tick episode that does it too, in the animated series, how often our heroes have to save Christmas and discover the true meaning of Christmas. If we did that with Valentine's Day more often than we have, it would always be probably somebody gets hit with a love potion, and the big lesson at the end is that beauty is only skin deep. Beauty is only in the eye of the beholder. And yet, it's so well written, and we get so many wonderful Tick speeches. I'll read one or two, and the situation is preposterous and a lot of fun, even though there's a little bit of, like, I don't want to say gross out factor, but just like, ew, that's, kind of supposed to weird you out stuff in this. A lot of it just remains funny, and that's also in the same vein that it is with non-Edlund, all the way down to nudity or near nudity, which is a joke with characters like Barry Hubris, where at one point he has to take off his Tick costume because he has decided that he no longer deserves the mantle of the Tick, and that's not his identity anymore, so he just takes off his costume and doesn't replace it with anything and runs around naked. There's a guy here that just runs around in his underwear, and I cannot begin to tell you why. And that's very true to this material. It's so ridiculous and absurd. So anyway, at the beginning of this, the Tick, and like, I immediately perked up at this opening page because I went, oh wow, this right away feels real faithful to Tick material. This is I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier. This feels like a perfect fusion to me of, like, tonally, of the cartoon show and the Ben Edlund comics. Like, especially in structure, it feels like an episode of that show. And right away, we have to have a villain with some kind of a crazy thing for a head. That's a big thing with the Tick, of course. Pineapple Pocopo, he's got pineapple for a head, and Chairface Chippendale, he's got chair for a head, etc., etc. Now we've got the Candyman, which is funny because immediately I'm just imagining Tony Todd in this role and doing this dialogue, but immediately this dialogue is funny and perfect for the Tick. And this art, by the way, also reminds me a lot of the cartoon show before anything else. And there are characters that feel almost like they're based on other characters just in the models that I'll talk about as we go along. But the Candyman, as you see here, has a bubblegum machine for a head, and he says the world will be crushed between the gummy heel of Candyman. And the Tick has the perfect response. He says, "Gummy doesn't crush." It's fantastic. So this is not going to be our main villain. This is, and we do this in several episodes of the cartoon show also, like with Red Herring, and there's an episode with Baron von Violent, with the belt that makes you grow into like a kind of a bane, and et cetera, et cetera. And so he has this wonderful fight with the Tick and Arthur where he's throwing gumballs and he's throwing exploding chocolates. He's a little bit like a candy version. I mean, I don't know what his motivation is, but he's a little bit like a candy version of Breadmaster. That was another thing that really reminded me of the animated series, all the way down to he's got names for all of his food weapons, and when he throws them, they do different things. And there's this wonderful gag where he throws a like you can see here all the names of all of the dangerous chocolates he has. He's got a electroshock one and an oil slick one and a fireball one, but he accidentally throws one that turns out to just be chocolate, and that's not helpful. But he does get Arthur with one that's rock candy, and Arthur has to eat 10 pounds worth of rock candy. And a running gag here is that part of the reason he can't lose weight and that he still feels fat is because he keeps getting in these situations where he has to eat himself out. And he apparently recently just did this with fish, and so he and Tick take this guy down. This villain also reminds me a little bit of the Deadly Bulb too, because he's got like a balloon. I mean, it comes out of his head, but he's got like a balloon that he tries to escape with, and the Tick breaks the balloon just like he does with the Deadly Bulb to bring him back down to Earth. It's a lot like that character. And so the main thing that's going on here with Arthur is he is trying to, as he does with Carmelita and as he does in an episode of the Patrick Warburton Show, he is trying to date a cute girl who likes him, and he doesn't understand why, because he's not a physical specimen like the Tick, and this girl's real pretty, and he's just hoping that the Tick doesn't ruin it for him. And the Tick does not care about, and it's Valentine's Day, and the Tick does not care, again, about love, and he doesn't have time for dating, and he talks like his chemical composition just doesn't even allow for that. And Sally Vacuum is interviewing him, and by the way, I didn't remember if Sally Vacuum was a Ben Edlund creation in the comics or something else in the comics before the cartoon show, because as far as I understand it, anything that was in the comics first, the comics can continue using. But if it was invented for the TV show, we never see any of that again, so I assume that there's rights issues. I mean, see that adapted again. So that's why the Patrick Warburton Show has to axe Deflator Mouse and instead creates a new character that's like that, like another parody of Batman, but isn't Deflator Mouse in Batman Well. But we have Sally Vacuum here. So again, maybe I'm forgetting that she shows up in comics earlier. Probably so. But she is interviewing the Tick and asking if he has some kind of a love interest, and he gives us our first speech and says, "Egads, I'm talking about Lady Justice." Actually, he starts his speech with, "I'm a superhero. There's no room in my brain for a libido." And then he starts going on about Lady Justice and how, this is exactly how Edlund would write it. There's no room in his life because she is his true love. And so there is a chemist that sees the Tick talking about this on television, and he's shedding a single tear, which is probably just a tear of happiness because he's so glad that he gets to be a superhero and fight for justice. But this chemist thinks that he's crying because he's not allowing himself to love and because he is giving too much of himself for the city. And so he decides to whip up a love potion, and that's where I start to roll my eyes a little bit on first read. And he is ultimately going to give the Tick the love potion, and he's going to fall in love with a middle-aged to elderly homeless woman on the street who ends up being a kleptomaniac and goes into his apartment and tries to steal everything. And some of that gets a little bit tedious, but there are some amusing jokes here and there throughout that. And meanwhile, our real villain, who we're going to tangle with at the end of this, who is a lot like the giant in the Amazon Tick show, the NML. I'm trying to remember what he's called now. It's been too long. I'm sorry, the Very Large Man, the VLM. That's what it is, the Very Large Man. He's like that, and reminds me a little bit of Dinosaur Neil. Anyway, he gets his tragic backstory on Valentine's Day. He's a sad, tragic teenager who is really drawn to look a little bit older than a teenager, but he is in chemistry class, and the girl that he likes gives him a Valentine, making fun of him and calls him Acne Jack, and that he's a pizza face, and everybody makes fun of him in this class, and it's real sad and messed up. And so he becomes the villain, Acne Jack, and he has a disaster with chemicals. I should mention, by the way, in case you're wondering why this is in black and white, that's the tradition of Tick comics. They're almost always in black and white, and I'm sure that's a cost-saving measure from New England, which is, of course, not typically a publisher, but a retailer. But I also think part of the reason that this late and into the 2000s we continue doing this in black and white is just we have that tradition. The Tick new series was all in color, so they started going to color, and most of, if not all of the miniseries have been reprinted in color at this point. I say most. I doubt some of the spin-offs have. Like, I doubt there's one like that for Chainsaw Vigilante, but certainly the original non-Edlund comic has been reprinted, actually, I think several times now in color, and several of the others as well. I was also going to mention that by the end of this, I think part of the reason it wins me over on the real typical love story side, it's got to be a love potion kind of story, is because it feels like it's a parody of holiday specials. And again, there's not a lot with Valentine's Day, but I wonder if they're all like this. I wonder if every time they do a holiday special, they're taking a real routine plot that you're familiar with and playing around with it in the Tick's universe. And if more of them do that, I especially like doing it here. It'd be cool if we had kind of a tradition of that. But I don't know if that's what we're doing. One gag I kind of like is that it turns out that if the Tick did have, as he says, a libido, he would kind of have his pick of women as soon as these women on the street realize, and they just come out of nowhere. Apparently there's just all these attractive women hanging out on the street, and they find out that the Tick has been hit with a love potion and wants love. And so they all start throwing themselves at the Tick, and this might seem it's a parody comic. It's 1998. This might seem to some people with modern sensibilities like this is sexist or stereotypical or something. But I like the idea that you have these women that that admire the Tick because he is saving them on probably a weekly basis, and he's big and attractive, at least presumably so, under his mask, if it even is a mask. But that's an amusing take that I've never really seen before. That you have women that just throw themselves at the Tick, and the irony of it is he's not interested, and he's still not interested because he's falling in love with this homeless lady on the street pushing a cart. And this is the best speech. And like I said, this guy is so good at writing Tick speeches. So I want to read this real quick. I am a man alone, no more. The fortress of solitude I have constructed around myself has become a prison. And it's time for a conjugal visit. Perfect. Brilliant, Wong. Like a supervillain, my heart has broken free of its confinement, but the defender of justice in me will not halt its criminal trespass, for love is a crime. It's an institution, and I know my institutions. Good stuff. The Tick knows his institutions because he started it in one. He's in a mental institution at the beginning of the first issue of Edlund series. So anyway, Acne Jack starts growing, and the Tick tries to double date with Arthur and his new girlfriend, Chet. I don't know, Chet could be a girl's name, but there you go. And so the chemist feels bad, the almost nudist chemist for some reason. That's never explained. I guess that's supposed to be the joke. Feels responsible for what's happened to the Tick, so he drives to where the rather he feels I should say he feels responsible for I'm trying to remember actually why he shows up. Is it because of the acne guy, or is it because of the Tick? I think it's because of... No, it's because of the acne guy. Sorry. He thinks he can solve that problem, and after he has... given the Tick the vial, and he didn't mean, pardon me, and he didn't mean for so much of it to hit the Tick, which is why he's insanely enamored with this woman. But then he finds out about the acne guy and decides he can go try to solve that problem. So, and immediately after he says, "Oh, I've learned my lesson. I'm never going to try to interfere with anyone again." Immediately he goes, "Oh, I'm going to go try to help out this acne guy." And he goes to the very chemistry lab where Acne Jack was created, and he develops an antidote there in the middle of this destroyed school. So then we get to our climax, and you have this rampaging monster with Acne Jack, and the Tick pretty easily talks him down because he is idealist, and he doesn't look at... He's an idealist. He doesn't look at people's outsides. He looks at who they really are underneath, and he immediately can recognize that this guy isn't meaning to do what he's doing, and that he is just looking for love. And the Tick can sympathize with that, and so he's able to talk Acne Jack down. And so our big moral at the end of the story is... even Arthur, who is hoping that this girl will fall for him despite his own physical appearance, even Arthur didn't understand as well as the Tick that beauty is only skin deep. That's the idea. And so the chemist manages to help Acne Jack with his antidote, and then the Tick, he gets the... he helps Acne Jack, not with the antidote, but is going to develop an antidote for him too. But he gives the Tick the antidote, and then he is no longer interested in the homeless woman, and she's like, "Oh, good, because you're a crazy person," and she runs off. And then the gag at the end, again, this also continues the tradition of the Tick ending on not anything like as good of jokes as are in the rest of the book, but he's got a tail at the end. Somehow the potion, I guess, gave him a tail. And so he has that now. I'm sure that never comes back anywhere. But anyway, I talked a little bit more specifically about the plot points and ins and outs of this one, because I know nobody watching this will probably have read this. But, I also wanted to show you the back cover because I think it's amusing. Check it out. We got, instead of nutrition facts, it's nonsensical facts. Serving size is 23 slices. Servings per container 1. Chuckles, total fun, goodness, evil. Less than 1 AG. That's good. There are 18 grams of total craziness, however, and it's pro-justice, aren't you? Not a significant source of calories from fat, saturated fat, cholesterol. That's great, because that's just what's usually on a box like this. And then here's all of the ingredients in the chocolate, and to the right, what all the chocolates are supposed to be. And again, they sound horribly unappetizing, but at first glance, it looks like a regular chocolate box, which is fun. So number 6 is Chum. That's pretty good, because that's what the tick is always calling Arthur. 14 is a left sock. We have a chewy string, caramel cardboard, potato cream, disgusting. Peached whale. That's pretty good. Thin lint. Lint warp is a thing in a animated tick episode. And then I won't read all of these, but ingredient, sugar, spice, everything nice. So apparently we get the Powerpuff Girls here. Oh, and snake, snails, and puppy dog tails, which means we also get the Rowdy Rough Boys. And I love that all the way at the bottom, one of the ingredients is Sean Wong himself. Plans, copyrights, original wrongs, Sean Wong. Good stuff. He's great. He has such a good voice for these characters and such a good sense of the structure of the cartoon show. I really feel like that's what this is based on, and I'm going to look this guy up. I'm going to see if maybe I can't get him on the show to chat with me about the tick on the Captain Logan show. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's review, and yeah, next time we get to a holiday, I might check my box and see if I have a holiday special from the tick, and I'll review something else for you tomorrow that'll be very different from this. I was Captain Logan. Happy reading. Bye, guys.